Welcome to the Purple Rock Podcast. I am your host this week, Matt. With me is Emma. Yes, we are different from your usual hosts. Johnny Mundo would call us blackjack and hookers. So we are the people's champion. So
We
we
are.
are wrestling fave. Say hi for the people, Emily. Emma,
Hello, people.
I already spoiled your secret identity. I'm so sorry about that.
Oh no. See,
I'm
Steven took care to not dox me on our hat, but here at Purple Rock, we're just screwing it up
yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah, I know. We're off to the smoothest of starts. We're the professionals here, right? I mean, I don't know. We've done this a few times before. I think we know what we're doing, don't we?
Sure. I mean, there is the fact that they made it like fully explicit this season, mostly because of me, but we're totally professional. I think a lot of it is also you, though. I think you're about as bad as I am.
Oh, I am. I just learned to control myself because I was talking to Andy all summer and couldn't curse
And
for the
the
sensitive
children, yeah.
child ears. Yeah. Which, by the way, I am really glad to not be to be talking to someone other than Andy about something. But let's talk about Survivor rather than each other. Let's start at the end for the beginning of this episode. Let's talk about the Tribal Council. What'd you think? What'd you think of the decision? We lost Jessica. Is that a big loss?
Nah, and like no even real offense to Jessica. I think this is a problem you see to second boots a lot is the first boot is, I mean, obviously in this season it was an unusual case, but usually the first boot is kind of exciting. It's great because it's usually like a huge disaster or something. And the second boot is just like, eh, obviously there are exceptions to this rule. Jacob Derwin did not go quietly into the good night last season, but that was also in the premiere, yada yada. But yeah, she's just, young girl, didn't have a huge personality. Like, there wasn't
Very
enough.
young. Very,
Yeah,
very
very,
young.
very young. Not
19. How much are we really going to see from a 19-year-old?
right. There wasn't like she did seem to make a couple connections, good for her, but she was there so short. It's not like we really saw that play out. So it's not like I'm like, oh no, the potential of young Jessica Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that I was, happy to see her go, but at the same time, I think considering the alternative, I think we kept the more interesting, entertaining person around. And that's not always because of anything that Lursa herself is doing. I think it's also because of the type of relationships that she has formed, I think seem more interesting.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of the tribal itself? Anything stick out to you there?
I think the thing that stuck, well, two things. I don't know if it was just cynicism or what, but I definitely thought Lyrsa was going to be the one to go home. A lot of it was, I thought Christian's voting confessional really seemed like a death knell there with the, like, oh, I really wanted to work with you. Felt more like something that would have gone towards Lisa than Jessica. I don't know if he's just being nice or if he knows that he's the swing vote, so he wants it to be, which people have done before.
Yeah.
They know they're the swing vote, so they try to keep it vague. Um,
Maybe he was like yelling it so everyone could hear it back at the, back saying on the stumps, and they're like, "Oh, that's really nice of Christian to say
and that way,
that."
the people who are all blindsided will be like, "Well, he wanted to work with us. Maybe we can still work with him." Um, but what stood out the most to me was when, and it ended up being really funny in retrospect, is when Jessica says, like, oh, you can't stop playing at tribal council because I guess she
Yeah.
thinks because Lyrsa didn't come to her that
Yeah,
didn't go
no,
to play. Because I was like, oh, honey, she has not waited till tribal council.
yeah, no. You see, that's when I knew it was Jessica. The second she said that, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is the editors doing the dramatic irony thing they're doing." And then I felt kind of bad because I think they were also hanging a lampshade saying that Jessica wasn't playing when it seemed that the reason they targeted her wasn't just for tribe strength, but because she had good social bonds, which is, of course, playing Survivor. I thought, perhaps that subtext of the editors there was a little unfair to her, but also like who cares? It's the second boot.
Yeah.
Um,
As funny as it was, I think for her to be like, oh, they definitely were voting for me because I'm a threat, like, and Natalie sort of thinking the same thing. I'm like, guys, the second boot is not being targeted for being a threat
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and if they are, it's like they're a threat, but also physically weak. Like maybe a Sierra Easton, and obviously All-Star seasons are a completely different animal. But
Right.
just like as an example of someone who is both physically weak and strategically scary, that's someone who maybe you would target as a threat because they are a threat and also offer no value to you. You don't vote out, Joey Amazing his first season just because you think he's a threat because you also need that food.
Right. Well, unless you're Vince and you think that you are, Joey Amazing, but even better.
Sure, but we're talking about people who might have a modicum of self-awareness.
You mean people who live in the real world? I don't know if those people go on Survivor. Um,
Fair enough.
so, well, let's talk about this. Elizabeth stuck her neck out for Larissa, right? I
Mhm.
mean, yeah. So, what do you think of that? Do you think that was the right thing to do?
I think it was because she seemed to really have a tight bond with her. It doesn't seem like she was necessarily like she was like sort of in the group, but it doesn't seem like she was super tight. Like the other person we really saw her talking to was Nick, who was almost the first boot.
Yeah.
So I think that's her strong bond. Like, yeah, you could just kind of go along with the crowd and just sort of survive another day. I think if it had really started to turn and was looking bad, like maybe you need to back off. But she was starting, she was able to get other people on board, obviously. But like even, once you get Gabby kind of looking uneasy about Jessica and B, I think then yeah, go for it, if you have an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think it's not that she, gambled her entire game on this. She saw that her ally was in trouble and she felt out some people to see if there was an opening. And Gabby gave her the opening really quick and told her, hey, look, I think I can get Christian as well. And once you're at four, getting a fifth is not that hard usually. And it just happened to be that Christian had a fifth already. They probably didn't know that when they first started scrambling to action, but this is why you have to explore it. You can't just accept the inevitable when the inevitable is not inevitable, especially because this is the first boot. You really don't know where people stand yet.
Right.
I mean, this is where you draw the lines. But the other reason I was happy, and I think I wanted to focus this on Elizabeth because one thing I'm really enjoying about this season so far is Elizabeth and Lyrsa's relationship. The two of them together, I think, are a really interesting pairing. And, it's not so much that I was happy that Lyrsa didn't go home because I find Lyrsa super interesting. I just find her interesting when she's with Elizabeth. And I think I do find Elizabeth more interesting on her own. What do you think of their pairing?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a classic sort of survivor trope, the unusual pair. And like, sure, we were maybe introduced to one like quote unquote unusual pair, but I don't think Nick and Christian are as different as Nick thinks he is. It's like
No.
purely geography, right? Like that's the only thing. He's like also I mean, he's like a lawyer, so he's at least somewhat intelligent. Maybe not all of them, but yeah,
Well,
that is
and
the
most of
only.
them are nerds, so I don't think he's even getting away from that one.
Oh yeah,
And
I was just
as
throwing shit at you, but the yeah,
oh
like
right,
they're both nerds. They're both Survivor super fans. Like,
yeah,
although ironically, I think JT was more of the Survivor fan in Token Jeans, like
and
because Steven was
Steven, I would
recruit.
believe that.
Stephen was a recruit, but still in terms. Also, I wanted so badly for Know It Alls or something because it was like their live show. I feel like Steven really could have pulled a like I knew JT. I played
You,
with JT. I was aligned with JT. You, sir, are no JT Thomas. But
except that I don't know if people really want to be doing that after JT's recent performances. They
true.
don't quite hold the same mystique they once did. Um,
This is
but
true. But I think he's still no JT, even despite that, which is sad. But yeah, like they're not that different. Elizabeth and Lisa, I think, are definitely have more of the, just sort of different backgrounds, different personalities, even, and it's fun. We love a like opposite pairing.
yeah, and and since you brought them up, let's talk about Nick and Christian a bit. I don't find them that interesting of an opposite pairing. But they had the swing decision to make here, or at least the episode portrayed it that way. So I guess the question is, did they make the right choice? I mean, I happen to think that it doesn't really matter too much at this point. I think voting out Jessica, you'll probably get most of the people who are on the other side of that to kind of fall in again pretty quick. And if Christian has a really good bond with Gabby, that's where you go. You go with the people who you're tightest with, and you try to preserve your majority, your numbers that way. And for Nick, it's you go wherever the majority is because you were on the outs and you were getting voted out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it really at this early, you should almost always go where the majority is, even if you're obviously building that majority like Elizabeth. But I don't think if it had gotten to the point where it was definitely going to be Lisa, I don't think she should have like not voted for her out of like loyalty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree regarding Christian and sticking with Gabby. And especially, like, yeah, they were talking about challenge performances, but I really don't see Lierse and Jessica being that different in
No, I
that
think
regard anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Maybe, if they had targeted Carl, which is like a smart thing on Elizabeth's point to realize they can pivot there,
fair.
which is not only with the physical strength thing, but you also have how she was talking about her being like the social linchpin there. But I do think it was they're relatively equal, but I do think it was better for Nick to go this way, not just because of the majority, but because this was the side that more like needed to build a coalition, whereas the other side expected they already had the coalition.
Yeah,
The other side was, we saw like they were shook, like they figured everyone, this is a consensus vote, everyone's with their side, so they're not going to be thinking, oh wow, Nick voted with us, cool, we can work with Nick. Wow,
yeah,
these
yeah.
people, they needed him. They
Right.
needed him, and now he can feel like he's a part of something. And he was almost the first boot, so that's important.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and on a tribe of underdogs, I think the relative cool kids on that tribe were on the what turned out to be the minority side. I think Dee and Jessica and Carl and Davy even were the relative cool kids on this tribe. So they had a certain air of expectation to them that people would fall in line. When people need you, they're gonna reward you with loyalty because they needed you. And it might not last, for the entire game, but there is something to that. When you're just joining something that's already in place, you're just joining something that's already in place. You have no assurance of your spot in that. What do you think of Gabby's reaction? That kind of really was the thing that got the ball rolling because it seemed that she was kind of down to change the target even before Elizabeth approached her.
Yeah, Gabby's reaction is interesting because I'm pretty mixed on it because at first I think great. Like so often when people are talking about challenge strength, they don't necessarily or whatever reason to vote someone off. They're not necessarily seeing down the line,
Right.
and they're just like, oh, it's not me. The fact that she recognized, like, okay, if they're going to target physically weaker players or those seen as physically weaker, I could easily be next.
Yeah.
So let's not go that direction. That's great. That's, I think, really smart, a good thing to notice that you don't always see people notice. I think she went a little overkill with the paranoia then, because then you have Elizabeth talking to her. She's like, oh, so it's me, right? And it was like,
Yeah.
wait, your whole thing was that you were going to be next. Like, how did that push to being forward? And I'm sure we'll talk about that more. Maybe it's now like the thing with Christian was like a little weird. I think that message is fine. I think the tone is a little
Oh, I didn't think that was weird. I think that was clear as day what was happening there. She was flirting with him. That was that was definitely what that
unfortunate.
was.
Yeah, but it's not
And
good. I mean, to be fair, her bio
no,
says
no, no. She was making sure to make physical contact, that he's calm, so that he feels a connection. This is like all in like the flirting handbook. I
I
think
just the whiny voice just I think is a little much. The like
maybe that's exactly what he wanted to hear, though.
maybe that works on you. I don't know.
I mean, I am the single guy.
This is
You
true.
are the engaged woman. I think
Which
I
means
know a
I've been
little bit
successful
about.
about
I
flirting.
think I know a little bit more about flirting than you do. I don't know.
Or I've been proven successful.
Yes, yes.
Watch that
That's the
now.
obvious answer. Um, but yeah, so I mean, yeah, I thought that was actually like, I think it came off a little weird on TV. I actually think it was like very effective. I think it kind of appealed to something in Christian. I don't think Christian is the type of guy that has women kind of like asking him to do these things for them, like asking, him to save them, if you will. And I think that has a kind of appeal to someone because they're like, oh, like I'm really needed. Like this person wants me, they need me. I think that's kind of the effectiveness of her pitch to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I don't think it was like the worst thing in the world. I think it was just like a little bit, like just dial it back like a notch or two. Like I think the protect me and that sort of thing had the right idea. I think it just her tone was not just like the whininess like being unpleasant for us to watch, but I think it also makes her seem a little more paranoid, and you don't really want to come across as paranoid to
Yeah, that could,
people.
yeah.
Especially like
If
I
she
think
develops the reputation as paranoid, that could bite her in the butt later, and that could cause a lot of resentment from within her own alliance.
yeah, like I think are you going to protect me? I think that's fine and that is what you're saying. I think the do you want to play with me thing is weird. And I think the reason why he's like, what you mean like in the sand is because to
That
him he's
was,
like
yeah, that was a pretty funny reaction in
that was so
how
hilarious. And I think the reason he reacted that way is because from his viewpoint, like they've been
it
a day
played
one
it.
alliance,
Yeah,
and he's like, yeah, like that's why he's like, wait, what would you like? When have I seemed like I don't want to play with you? And then you just kind of added on that using that little sort of whiny voice kind of has the weird infantilization and the weird and the
right.
flirting with that makes it just kind of squicky for us. But that's not really the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where you start to have that like paranoia line versus, hey, we're in this together. You can help me. You'll be my hero and savior type vibe that could totally work.
Yeah, I think I'm more talking about the efficacy on Island rather than the way it presents to the viewer. Because as a viewer, I was kind of like, "Oh wow, yeah, this is playing a little weird," but I was also kind of interested in it because it was different. But let's talk about someone else who can be a little too much at times, or perhaps not. How are you feeling about Christian?
Christian, I think, is like the Chris Noble of nerds. He is,
Oh, whoa, whoa. Okay, okay. Big talk here, Emma. Back up, back that up. You've just made
yeah,
an Andy-like pronouncement there.
he is the Chris Noble of nerds because he is so over the top that I don't think it can be an act. Like you wouldn't be able to pull that off. Like I thought this even in the premiere. He's so nerdy that it cycles around from parody all the way back to genuine.
Hmm.
Like because it's not just if you're trying to and sure maybe some of the things he said is like he's like trying to be clever, but if you're trying to like put on an act, I don't think you're making those like weird faces he does because you're not trying to look that lame. like I
I
think
think you can tell when the act disappears when he gets really into what he's saying because it's really hard to maintain an act when you're like passionate about what you're talking about.
yeah,
It's hard to kind of control your face and your tone and just, and what you're saying. You can really only concentrate on like one of those things unless you're like really trained, which I'm going to guess that Christian is not trained to control himself in that way just based on his occupation. You know,
not being a trained actor.
I'm just saying, it's something that is difficult to maintain focus on like two of those things at once, let alone all three. And I think when you see him get like really into talking about something, like at tribal council, I think when he was given his tribal council speech, I think that kind of may have started off as something calculated, but as he gets towards the end, he's like really into it, and you can see it on his face and in his hands and in his tone. And I don't think he's faking all of that.
Yeah, and just even his, like, overall demeanor, the way, because he's not, it's weird, he's, like, definitely has that, like, super nerdy look, but I think if he, like, it's, like, almost all in the way he carries himself, like, I mean, obviously glasses are sort of seen as nerdy, but, like, because he kind of hunches over and he slouches, like, I think if he's, like, really carried himself in a more confident way, we wouldn't really be viewing him the way he does, and I don't like maybe when he's picked as the weakest in the very beginning, he's putting that on a little bit, but like you see them walking to the challenge and he's like
Yeah.
slumps over. Like I think he just slouches, which a lot of people do, but it sort of it all goes into that characterization.
Do you think that if he and Chris Noble were in like Ponderosa together, Chris Noble would give him like the man version of a makeover? Like, what would it be like she's all
But she's
that
all
type
that.
of, yeah. Would it be like that type of thing? And he'd be like, okay, this is how you're going to do that. I would,
Yeah, they take off the glasses, then they'd give him a haircut instead of taking off the glasses and letting the hair down.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I would. Oh, I would pay money to watch that.
That'd be so good, right?
Or like Christian could totally do a Queer Eye, but that's a little less fun, I think, than making Chris Noble do it because Chris Noble won't be gentle and like nice about it.
No. Chris Noble would be the perfect person to do this.
Incredible. Um,
but yeah,
yeah.
so I guess the question then is, do you like him? Are you entertained by him?
So that's the other thing. This is why he's also the Chris Noble of nerds. I find him entertaining. I think he would be exhausting to spend time with in real life.
Yes. Yeah. So here's the thing. I went to a college with a lot of people like Christian. I recognize this type exactly. I hated to spend time with these people, and yet I'm kind of enjoying him on the show. To be fair, it's like up and down. And I think it's going to continue to be up and down for me. Last week, I kind of, I really didn't like him. And then this week, I kind of liked him. And what sold me on him was that little speech at Final Tribal, or not Final Tribal, Tribal Council. Because,
Spoiler.
yeah, no, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I did get this
Yeah.
week's boot right.
We're kidding, just in case anyone, like, especially if you're just listening and you can't see facial expressions.
Yeah.
Definitely kidding.
Yeah. But it kind of reminded me of Yule explaining elephants
Mhm.
in Cook Islands, which was this kind of like, well, Jeff, actually, elephants, blah 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 blah, and I think we like that from Yule because Yule doesn't look like a nerd.
He's so
Um,
handsome.
right. But the thing is, like, there's that type of like, oh, this is a really interesting fact. Let me explain this to you. While in this kind of aspect to that little speech that Christian gave, that kind of won me over because that's something that I think if you kind of get lost in that moment, I think it's an interesting aspect to a character. He got like a little like starry eyed. It's different to see. I enjoyed that. So
Mhm.
I'm up and down on him, and I think I'm going to continue to be up and down on him. But I think I'm more glad he's on the TV than not.
Yeah, and that I think maybe why he sort of rubs people off the wrong way is because he seems like such a cliché nerd that it seems forced, but I think people kind of forget that, I mean, there's a reason the cliché look of a nerd and stuff exists, like, obviously not everyone's gonna fit that definition, but it's also gotta come from somewhere,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, he just likes to build his robots and stuff.
Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Davids. Let's talk about the Goliath tribe. And you know where I want to start. Let's start with Natalie.
Oh, Natalie.
Yeah, she's something. She is just full on herself, and they say that you can't really hide yourself on Survivor. I don't think she was even trying.
If she was,
Yeah,
well,
can you just imagine what she's actually like?
somehow even worse. Or if she's trying and she's just that bad at hiding it.
Mm.
Yeah, that conversation with Jeremy was amazing. And
Yeah,
sort of it's
that was the highlight of the episode for me. That
it's kind of
conversation with Jeremy.
sorry. It's kind of like, I mean, God, far be it for me to bring up healers versus hustlers. But I think it wasn't it when Chrissy's like talking to Bed and she's like, yeah, some of us like are just kind of feeling steamrolled. And he's like, what? No, you're not.
Yeah, which is though in that case when he said, no, yeah, no, I guess no, you're not.
Yeah,
No, that was just as
that's not
inaccurate.
great.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, that was about right. But
So
he's
hey,
just
Natalie can still win. She's just got to find every idol.
yeah, she's starting behind the eight ball a little earlier than Ben did.
Yeah.
It's really I kind of thought this was where it was going to head after the first episode, where we see everyone working on the shelter and she's just kind of standing there and pointing. Um,
Yeah, that was
because that's not something people like. People don't like it when you're telling them to do work and not doing it yourself. But I also like really enjoy the fact that she's just completely and unabashedly herself. I think it's fun to watch. It's just like, oh yeah, this person's rubbing everyone the wrong way. Let's see how long this will last.
yeah, especially because I mean, what if they never lose,
Oh my god, they're gonna
And
no, they will throw a challenge at some point to get rid of her if this continues.
and
Like,
then like Dan will get voted out instead
oh
somehow.
yeah, no, it'll be great because like Johnny Mundo or something will be like, oh no, I got to keep her around for professional wrestler reasons. He's probably like, oh, I have to keep a heel around. That's actually like that's honestly that probably has gone through his mind. Like, I have to keep a heel around to keep the pressure off me, which I don't think would be a bad strategy for him.
It's
Because
just that's a long way to have to bring
it's a
someone around.
long way. It's a
Yeah.
long way. And that's the problem with trying to drag Philip Shepard all the way to the end.
Mhm.
Um, is that if you have someone that's that unlikable from day one and everyone has told you they don't like her, it's a lot of work to keep taking them along.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So what do you think of her assessment of everyone's gameplay?
Gosh, I mean, it's just so interesting because watching, like, I know most of you guys didn't do any preseason stuff. I did a little bit. I listened to Josh Wigler's stuff, and she seemed really self-aware in the preseason. Like she was, she's watched the show
Serious?
since.
Wait,
I'm
she did.
dead serious. Like
Oh my god, I cannot imagine.
she'd watched all the seasons and she's like, look, I know I could easily be a target for an early vote. Like I'm a woman, I'm an older woman, I'm an older black woman. Like none of
Yeah.
these things are, this is like tends to be a type of person who gets voted out early. Like, so she's like, so I'm gonna really have to, work to like not let that happen. And somehow that translated into bossing people around while also not doing anything, which is something that like a 35-year-old white man doesn't even always get away with on Survivor,
Yeah.
And like, is it fair that that she has to work that much harder to like be seen as, not like a person in the tribe or whatever? No, absolutely not. Does that mean you should be a worse member of the tribe? Also, no. Like it and I mean, I guess I get going around and saying like, "Oh, you shouldn't target me because I'm not gonna win," but like, it's also like that's not why they're targeting you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
guess
think
it's kind
there's
of in
a
the sense that maybe she thinks she can trick them, but like, also wait until you lose a challenge. I kind of feel like, and instead just try to ingratiate yourself because you don't know how much time you could have. Like a couple, you could have like
you
12 more days.
you could have a really long time with this Goliath tribe, you could be just rampaging through challenges for a long time. I think part of it was that I think in her mind, the way to kind of get the target off her is to be like, well, I'm not going to win. Why vote me out? I'm not a threat. But she's also not realizing that the reason you don't vote the first person out because they're a threat to win the game. You don't
Exactly.
vote the first person out because they're a strategic threat. Usually, you vote the first person out on your tribe, usually because you want to win challenges.
Yep.
And frankly, that should be your priority early
It's like
on.
win challenges or some if they just are ruining the harmony of the tribe, and she is doing both.
Yeah.
Or, like,
Yeah.
not winning challenge, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Right. So we have right now, a person here who no one on the tribe likes. Maybe she thought that because she was on like the Goliath tribe, that like they would have like a different attitude than usual. Maybe she thought it's like, oh, these are all the winners. Like they're not going to want to play against other winners.
Can I just say, I know we're mostly focusing on her conversation with Jeremy, but when you said you're playing like a bunch of Davids was like
That was great.
the
That was some
funniest
like
thing I've ever heard.
that was some Rupert level commitment to the theme right there.
Like, just it
you
had
know,
levels, man.
it was good. It was good. I really enjoyed that too. I mean, the Jeremy one was great because he was telling her like Jeremy didn't have to go out of his way to tell her that. Jeremy was
No.
doing that because he was like,
Jeremy also really made the subtext text there, like into you think of like Sari and Michaela's conversation when
yeah,
like Michaela's like when Sari's like, we can't do like Jeremy's like, look, like
yeah,
it was super straightforward and like I'm trying to help you. Like I have a kinship with you. This is like I'm telling you how you're coming across to people. No, I believe I get along with everybody. And, like, he did say but I kind of feel him thinking just like, "Right, I know you feel that which is the
That's the
problem."
problem. That's the problem.
What I'm trying to say about your self-awareness.
Yeah, no, yeah. So that was a great scene. That was a good, early character building scene that we needed from this season, both for like levity and also to like get a sense of who some of these people are. But let's talk about, I guess, her enemies, if you would, on this tribe. The three young girls who are pulling the strings, or are they? I mean, what do you think? Are they actually in charge here?
Well, as we were kind of talking about with the Davids and, "Oh, which side should you go with?" You can't really know who's in charge until a vote happens. I am
That's true.
sure Carl and B felt they were in charge,
Yep.
and you could see it very clearly on their faces that they were not. Which, for quick sidebar, how great to get those kind of blindside reactions so early in the season. You don't usually get that.
And this, I think, was an actual blindside.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't think Jessica knew her name was being thrown out. So this was not a hashtag blindside. This was an actual
they
blindside.
were blown away. But back to yeah, your actual point. Um,
Wasn't
I
so
mean,
much a
I
point as a question,
right.
but
Well, you know, the actual topic at hand, Mr. Pedantic. Um, I think they could be, you know, again, it's all hypothetical. I think they could easily have that 6 they're talking about with the boy. It's a little hard because John, you know, has said that he wants to keep around Natalie, so,
I
you
think
know.
that's the possible
Yeah.
kink in the wheels there because I think.
I do think they absolutely have Alec and Dave. Dan.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Dan?
well, yeah, yeah. I think that Alec and Dan are 100% with them. I think the only thing that could derail them is if John wants to do something else and can point out the fact that Dan has an idol and throw the target onto him. But even then, maybe you're looking at a 5-5. Maybe he can pull one more person over. I forget which girl was linked to him.
Oh, yeah,
Because it seemed like each guy had a girl that was linked to them. I obviously know Kara and Dan
yeah, Karen,
because
Dan.
because
I
Kara
don't know
Night
which one's
Dog.
Natalia and which one's Angelina.
I know it's too early in the season to distinguish them. I frankly don't even know who Alec is, other than the fact that he's in this conversation.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure which one's which. Although an interesting thing is this completely ignored Allison, who was barely in this episode. Allison's the one that looks like Janet, and so they could, but
I
you know,
still have no idea who you're talking about. Again, this is two
the
episodes
doctor,
in.
the privileged doctor who pretends she wasn't privileged. in the
No,
first episode.
I don't remember that. Like this is someone who's been on the screen for like for a brief second. I'm sorry, I don't remember that she was a privileged doctor.
Well, I was trying to spark your memory
Oh
from the
well,
very beginning of the
now you just
season.
made me look stupid. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to
Okay.
do it. Anyway, the point is she's the other, I mean, younger. None of the Goliaths are like super young anyway. I think Kara maybe is in her mid or early 20s, but Allison
No,
is
Kara's actually 30,
is she?
but yeah,
Okay.
no, Angelina, Alec, Allison, Dan are all in their 20s. So
Oh, is that okay? So yeah,
and
they're
Natalie's
like
also in their 20s. So
late, but they're more like mid to late, not like early to
yeah,
mid. I feel like so.
yeah. And I
Alice,
mean, she's 30, so she's barely out
right?
of it. Yeah,
So Allison is also around their age. They didn't talk about it, but if John starts to stray, they could bring her in
that's yeah. It's
pretty
weird.
easily, I'm sure, as like because like in sort of a girl power, but we're just using these guys type girl power as we vote out this woman. But um, and I mean, now we've seen that Jeremy really wants Natalie gone. Now,
Yeah.
the problem could be is that Jeremy also knows Dan has the idol, but maybe if he's also like, I know Dan has the idol, he also clearly doesn't have a high viewpoint of Dan's intelligence. So he probably feels like they can like take care of that at a later date.
Maybe, but you do need numbers to do it. Jeremy does seem to kind of be the focal point of the outsiders on this tribe. He's the one
Mm-hmm.
that's talking to Natalie. He's the one that's talking to Mike White. He seems to kind of be, the insurgency to the younger people's alliance that's happening there. So, and it was interesting because even though he was that middle, I didn't get a good sense of him as a player until he had that discussion with Natalie. And then I'm like, oh, wait, no, Jeremy's good. I like
Yeah,
Jeremy.
I like Jeremy too. Jeremy's good.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads to something we're going to be doing regularly on the podcast this season, which is we're just going to kind of be checking in. Me and you, didn't have a chance to talk about the premiere. So is there anything or anyone about this season that you want to highlight so far? Maybe someone you like that we haven't got to.
I've actually really enjoyed sort of the chances they've taken with the editing.
Okay.
We talked about that a lot. Well, we didn't, but it was much discussed about the premiere. But even this one had like little flashes of that when the Goliath girls, the Goliath gals were talking. I
That should be their tribe nickname. They should go to Nick. He could give that to them, and they could brand it.
exactly. I know not maybe not everyone was into it. I thought the little flashbacks of seeing them with like the guys was fun. Also because as you said, it's so early, we don't super know who everyone is. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, that's Alec, that's Dan.
Right.
But it's just even if maybe that exact scene wasn't like super effective in that sense, I also think it shows that they're experimenting, which I think is fun in a show this old that's been on this long to sort of just see them trying to try out different tactics and stuff, especially a show where people like read the edit so carefully.
Yeah, it's a different way of kind of telling the story. No, and
Mhm.
I really like that too. I thought I liked the non-chronological idol reveal, though I think I might be with Andy on that. That was done because they might not have gotten a shot of it, but I still like the way they did it. Um, I want to talk about someone who I actually really like so far and who we haven't discussed for good reason this episode, which is I'm really liking Davy so far. I like one thing I was kind of talking about with Christian was I like when people have genuine enthusiasm or just, genuine emotion in general. Not because I have such things, but because it makes for, I think, more interesting TV, more interesting persons when they have, a reaction to the game and to the moments in the game that are genuine and that project outwards. I think Davy is a good character. I think he's I think he's out there enough that he's not going to fade into the background. I like how much fun he's kind of having with it. He's like, oh, well, I caught the octopus, so I guess I'm the provider now. And he kind of steers into that like a mini Rupert, who, steers into whatever, role he's given. I like that he found the idol and that he was, excited to do it. I like, the way he kind of talked about making connections and, himself. Like, I think he's going to be around for a while. I get the sense that he's not going to be, a quick boot. And I'm really digging him. And I find that he's not really a focus of conversation yet for most people, but he's someone that I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not to be like boring, but I I think Davey's super fun. He seems like he has a fun personality. I think it should be pretty easy for him to bounce back from being on the other side of that vote too.
I think he has the easiest in with the people on the other side. I think someone like
Yeah.
Carl is gonna have trouble integrating there, and I could see him being the next boot. But I think Davey, I think he can come in a lot easier.
I agree. Like, 'cause I think even though we've seen him, I think if anything, I think he is paired with Carl just because we saw them talking at the premiere, but we haven't really seen him talking to anyone.
Yeah,
So he could easily be like, look, I just thought that's where the vote was going, and
yeah.
like make it an easy jump. And if he's the provider, they're probably not going to want to get rid of him this morning. He seems like a nice guy, so they're going to like having him around. Yeah, I think he should easily make the merge, barring like a swap screw or something if one happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say, but
Yeah.
no, I think I agree with you. I think he's going to be here for a bit. Anyone else that we haven't talked about that you want to highlight?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's enjoyable how dumb Dan seems to be, so that
Yeah,
should be fun.
he's got a good like
And
Cole vibe to him,
especially, yeah, because he's like doofy dumb.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
like that.
Cole. He's not Drew Christie.
Right, he's golden retriever dumb, not
Yeah.
not mouth breathing dumb. Which is a key distinction. Golden retriever dumb is kind of, like you walk around, you maybe run into stuff sometimes, you hurt yourself, but you're not just, sitting there for 10 seconds with your mouth open and we don't realize that, it's not a still, it's an actual video. So that's Alec Christie, not Drew.
Yeah, that's Alec, not Drew. But I think also sort of an interesting thing about now, granted, it's only 2 episodes in, but so far there's not really anyone I really dislike. Like maybe there's people
Okay.
I'm rooting against, but there's no one I find like loathsome yet, which is
There's
always good because
There's
that
no one I find loathsome, but there is someone who I'm kind of getting there, and that's Nick. And I don't think it's
yeah
anything that Nick has done so far. It's more just kind of the entire persona. The nicknames are not helping him. I'm
no I
really
hate
not
them.
into the nicknames.
Look, I said
But
it before and I'll say it again. The Black Widow Brigade is the only good alliance name. Do not at me. It was not a question.
everyone, we will give you her Twitter handle at the end. So if you want to add her, that's what you'll get that information.
They have
But
already tried and I am not having it.
yeah, but I just I don't like there's something about kind of the way he's approaching the game that's a little too transactional. That's like very not genuine. And I think, that is just really kind of rubbing me the wrong way. And it hasn't risen to the level of hate yet, but I could very easily see it doing so. But I want to talk about the guy who would be my dad's favorite contestant if he watched the show, which he doesn't. But if he did, my dad would love Mike White because my dad's favorite movie is School of Rock. And my dad is a huge Jack Black fan. Though when I tried to get him into Tenacious D's music, he was, not as much of a fan of that, sadly. But he's a huge School of Rock fan, so he would have to be rooting for Mike White.
You'd
But
have to be. He's Ned Schneebly.
I mean, he's the writer of the movie. He's the guy. Personally, if I was on the island, I'd want Mike White to stick around just to get all like cool, funny stories. Mike White ain't winning this game, but but is he someone who like I would like to hang out with on the island? Hell yeah. And I kind of like the way that he functions as a narrator. I think he's an engaging, personality in that sense, which is an important role to play. You don't need everyone being the person who does something. You need some people who are just the ones who comment on it.
Yeah, he definitely, I think, has like Penner upside, and that he's never
Yes.
gonna win. And probably no coincidence that they are both screenwriters, which represent degree I've never used. I'm
Well, maybe
a
maybe
writer. That's something.
yeah, maybe one day you can write your own School of Rock that will displace the actual School of Rock from the top of my dad's list.
I would never dare to replace. That was also my high school boyfriend's favorite movie, and probably the reason I had to go see Be Kind Rewind in theaters for one of our early dates, which was also probably one of our later dates because it only lasted 2 months.
Yeah. Uh, so
It's astounding that I'm getting married, by the way.
yeah, well, we're all very proud of you.
Yeah, I'm
Proud and
not
amazed.
good with the boys.
T-
Phrase?
yeah, I'm not gonna touch that
I
one
can
with a
touch
10 foot
that.
pole.
That's fair.
But yeah, no, I enjoy Mike White. I enjoy his narrator role. I think he's good. Other than that, I think the other big characters in this season, I think we've hit. Oh, except for uh, Johnny Terrific, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Wrestler, Johnny Goliath. Uh,
Yeah, he didn't give us a lot to work with this week, though.
nah, he didn't, which is why he didn't come up. He basically had
Yeah.
like the one scene
It
where
was just
he.
like, oh, I think it'd be fun to work with Natalie because who would see that coming? And like, yes, as we said, opposite
I'm
pairs
telling you,
are
it's the wrestling.
fun.
No, it's the wrestling
I
heel
know.
move. That's totally what that is. Who would want to work better? Who would want to work more with a villain than a wrestling heel? Like that's what that is right there.
But if
Uh,
he's already a heel, shouldn't he work with
but I don't think
someone
he.
who's
But
not?
I don't think he's being a heel on this season. I think he's the hero. I think he's holding himself at the hero. So maybe he needs someone else to be the heel. He has to find his villain. Which is what is Batman without the Joker, Emily?
With
Sorry, wrong
Emily.
podcast. Wrong podcast. Um,
That would be the wrong podcast still. That's
I know
DC.
that would still be the wrong podcast. I'm very proud of you for catching that one.
Thank you.
Uh,
I know some things.
no, I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying I'm proud of you for catching it.
Thank you.
Uh, okay, we should do some predictions.
All right.
It doesn't look like there's a swamp next week, so let's assume that we still have a tribe of Davids and a tribe of Goliaths. Who do you think is going home from the Davids?
Gosh, honestly, I know it sounds up, but like you'd think it would just be someone on the other side, right? But it's a pretty hard pick because if you could see Christian and Nick swapping back as long as they
No.
think Gabby is safe, because the physical liabilities are not on the side that got blindsided, and if they're
No.
still worried about that, they might, well, for lack of a better term, worry about that. But then it would be a total crapshoot. So I'm just gonna say Carl.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards Carl as well. It's hard though because you're right. If they lose another challenge, is it going to be because they physically underperformed? Is it going to be like Lyrsa said because they're just so big, over there? Which that was a really weird moment from her. Got to say, it didn't make me uh, like her that much when she was talking about like the Goliaths like that, though. But I think it would be Carl. I think he's the one that's most likely to kind of come out with, like kind of stomping around, like have this happen. I think he's the one that put a bunch of people in the crosshair. I think Carl is the one that's just the least likely to try to ingratiate himself back with the new majority. So I think you would just rely on the fact that he's a relatively bigger guy and think that would save him.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't do great in their first challenge in the premiere. I
No.
actually wondered if the reason, because I always kind of side eye when people start throwing boots at least in terms of the early game before the challenge, because it's like, because then people hear about it and then
Yep.
they start dividing. I think it's better to try to be like one happy family until you have to vote someone out and then deal with it in the early game, not
Yeah.
after the merge. But I kind of wonder if the reason he brought up Lyrsa and stuff is because he recognized he didn't perform well in that challenge, and you would think it would be counterproductive to to be like, let's vote out people who are bad at challenges. But by saying, oh, Lyrsa's the weakest, so we should target Lyrsa, people are like, okay, yeah, Lyrsa's the weakest. And you're thinking
Yeah.
that before the challenge, and it becomes something you've thought about for like 2 days.
Yeah, it's kind of like you put the thought in their head and then it becomes reality, whether or not it actually is reality.
Yeah.
It's one of those like self-fulfilling prophecies.
So while
Uh,
it obviously didn't work out for him,
didn't quite work out like that.
it was the worst idea.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, I think I agree with that. I think you want to choose your target early if you want to be one of those people in charge. You want to put that name out there early so that people can kind of come to terms with it by the time it comes up. Even though again
his
that didn't happen.
his real mistake was not noticing that Elizabeth was close to Lyrsa, whereas like we know
Right.
Dee and Jessica's mistake was not what's the word? Not like making Gabby feel
Safe.
confident.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
safe.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I mean, the mistake of Jessica and her crew this week was in the fact they neglected to shore up the rest of the people in their alliance to make sure they felt included and safe and as part of the alliance because enough people obviously didn't that they bolted. Um, so on Goliath, I'll go first this time since you went first last time. I think the easy answer is Natalie. I think that's the easy answer for a lot of reasons that we were shown in this episode. I'm not going to predict it though. I
Ooh.
think that I think if the Goliaths go to tribal, I think the idol is going to be forefront in people's minds, and I think they're going to get rid of Kara, uh, uh, the person, not Dan's dog. Um,
I
I
think Dan's dog is Kara,
okay.
and the person is Kara.
Well, she can work on that. Um, but so the reason I think that way is because I think there's been kind of just like enough seeds planted that maybe people, aren't gonna vote Natalie out. Maybe Natalie is such an obvious target that some people will think to themselves, they'll never see this coming. We can get out someone who, supports him. We can, weaken his position with the idol. Though, if that's their thought, they should go for him. But these are not the type of people that will ever vote out a Dan at this point. They'll vote out, the person he's close with, as they usually do in these seasons. And I think that would be her. I think we've seen it in the show a lot of times where you have a showman's develop and they just take out the girl part of that early on because they can never take out the guy.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the idol will kind of give them even more incentive to do it. And the fact they have Natalie as a just fallback, it's like, and if it doesn't work, then Natalie will get voted out. Who cares? I
Right.
think we'll kind of push some of them to be willing to take the chance.
It's an intriguing idea and would be fun. I think I'm just going to stick with the chalk pick, though,
Yeah,
and just coast on Natalie. Look, I'm
you
not
think you're
even going
gonna
to
go
do.
with the person who's obviously pissing everyone off and has no awareness of the fact they are doing so and seems to think she's doing just fine?
Yeah, plus, I'm not even going to be able to predict for like a couple weeks, so why rock the boat?
Yeah, there you go. You can go out on the high note, right? I guess we should probably talk about what's happening next week at this point, shouldn't we?
Well, I believe you'll be back, isn't that right?
I will be. You will not be joining me, though. I've heard you have something more important to do than this podcast, which I find hard to believe. But no, joining me will be John. East Coast will represent. Uh,
Boo.
that's right, the best coast.
No.
Um, yeah.
If
Uh,
it rhymes, it's true.
I don't think that's the case. Um, So you will get a chance to hear my thoughts back to back weeks. And Emily will be back in a couple weeks when she's done, doing whatever the heck is so important in her life. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You can find the podcast at on Twitter at Purple Rock Pod. I'm not used to doing these plugs. Okay, give me a second here. Our website's
Ow.
purplerockpodcast.com. Emily, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Purple Rock Emma, despite whatever Matt keeps calling me.
Jeez.
I mean, the facade is fully gone at this
To be
point.
fair, Hangouts is also doxing you because they
Yeah,
call
I know.
Emily. So,
Yeah. But you
but-
know what? That wouldn't fit on a Twitter handle anyway, so it's at Purple Rock Emma.
and I'm at Purple Rock Matt. If you want to tweet at John and Andy to tell them about how much better we were than they are, they're Purple Rock John and Purple Rock Andy. You
We
can
also have at Purple Rock Mark and at Purple Rock Brad if you feel like saying hi.
Yeah, that you might hear them on the podcast later this season. I actually don't remember. But you can also follow us. We're on YouTube right now, so you could always subscribe there for the occasional live shows. But you can follow us on any of your podcast catchers, whether it be iTunes or whatever the other ones are that that you usually listen to us on. I guess
So, did you remember our website with our wonderful community of commenters?
I'm pretty sure I did, but if you want to
Okay.
say it again,
Just in case, maybe you did.
purplerockpodcast.com, right? That's the website. And all
It
the
is.
great commenters that we love so much. Yeah. I guess we should hit the theme music, right?
All right. Hit it.